but not too far up, because even the best boats make very poor airplanes.
Learn how to fly the waves on Secrets of Speed, next on Hydropower.
Laboratory is a test facility. It's not even shown on the maps. A place known only as Lake X. Here, the fastest boat racers in the world come to experiment, to test their latest equipment and most promising new ideas. For the secrets of speed on water are carefully guarded information. In this program, we're going to take you behind the scenes to discover those inside secrets. And to do that, we've turned first to one of the fastest men in the business, Reggie Fountain. Not since the legendary Don Aronow, father of the cigarette boat, has one man so successfully designed, built, and raced his own boats. A former world champion tunnel boat racer, Reggie Fountain is now chairman of a multi-million-dollar company that produces a new generation of speedboats that are among the fastest in the world. Reggie is a hands-on CEO. His office, every chance he gets, the cockpit of his 120-mile-per-hour race boat, hands on the throttle. This past season, he scored victories in both American Powerboat Association and offshore professional tour competition. Reggie's secret of speed begins with a simple idea.
Well, the more you get the boat up out of the water and into the air, the faster the boat will generally run. Water hydrodynamically poses much greater resistance for high speed than does the air. So the more the boat is piercing the air as opposed to the water, the faster the boat's going to be. The downside of that is that it takes a lot of horsepower and a lot of money to get you up there in some cases. If you're up on the top of the water, depending on how rough the water is, the boat might tend to be quite a bit rougher than if you're knifing through the water.
The first key breakthrough in getting a boat to knife through the water was the development of the Deep V hull.
Deep V is exactly what it says. You're shaped much like a V, and you knife through the water and smooth out the waves is the idea there. That has a drawback to the extent that the deeper you pierce the water, the slower the boat's going to run. So what we've tried to do with the boats that we build is to design a modified type of V-bottom boat that gives the advantages of knifing through the top of the water rather than deep down in the water. So it lifts you above the water, but it's still nice through the water.
The next major breakthrough in the search for speed on water, the invention of the stern drive.
The stern drive, which is an offshoot of the outboard motor hooked up to a automobile V8 engine from within the boat, is probably one of the most innovative developments in high-performance boating, or any boating for that matter, because the stern drive allows you to trim the boat just like an outboard does. And a boat that is trimmable, as opposed to a boat with a shaft that comes through the bottom of the boat, is, by a test that we've done, gives 30 to 60% more performance with the same horsepower, because you can trim the boat at different angles for different speeds and for different water conditions. For example, you trim much more differently for calm water than you would for rough water.
Now, let's take a little ride with Reggie in one of his Merc Cruiser-powered high-performance boats and watch his secrets. The first step, get the boat up on plane.
So as we move forward, the boat will lift up and over. And when you feel it pop up on top of the water, then you're on a plane. That means it's broken free of the water and is running on the top of the water rather than plowing a deep hole through the water, much like a submarine would do. When we initially take off, we trim the trim tabs on the back of the boat down. That means we drop them down below the bottom of the boat, so that as the water comes running off the bottom of the boat, it hits the trim tabs, which are down. So the water comes off the bottom and hits that tab and lifts it up. If the tab is bolted to the back of the boat, which it is, that tends to kick the tail of the boat up and the nose over and get you up on plane quicker, which is up on top of the water. So you want your tabs down to trim that boat up. And you have your drives up under the boat, pushing towards the bottom and of the boat, pushing towards the surface to lay it over again. Once the boat pops on top and planes, then you want to lift the tabs up to allow the nose to come back up out of the water and run over the top of the water. And you're trying to get the boat more in the air at that point once you've popped up on top of the water and gotten on a plane. So then you want to start trimming your drives out and having your tabs come up the faster you go, until you run into some rough water, in which case you may want to bring your tabs back down just a little bit and your drives in just a little bit to knife through the top side of the waves. I say the top side of the waves as opposed to deep down in the waves, because if you have a good designed boat, planing properly, you'll be running up on top of the water rather than plowing down through the water.
But just how far above the water can you run and still maintain control?
You're better off having that boat riding right across the top of the waves, maintaining as much light contact with the water as you can. Way up in the air, it's usually way out of control. You don't have any propellers pushing you, and so you're much better to skim across the top of the waves rather than becoming airborne. And if you give the boat too much lift in rough sea conditions, you're apt to take off, which is not a very safe way to run a boat and not a very smooth way or fast way to run a boat. So trim is, again, very important depending on water conditions as well as speed conditions.
The next secret, coaxing the boat into a turn.
We drop the tabs down just a little. We bring the drives in a little to tighten the boat back into the water, because I said as you drop the tabs and bring the drives in, the boat tends to plow down into the water more and would allow it to track more around the corner. If you are up on top, really running fast and making very little contact with the water, as you would be doing in a high-speed planing condition, it's harder to get the boat to track in a corner. So I trim the drives in and the tabs down to give the boat better contact, and it tracks around the turns much, much better.
Championship offshore racing, the ultimate test of speed on water.
The top speed of our racing boats, both our twin-engine manufacturer's V-bottom boat, which is basically an open-class boat, and our triple-engine super boat, both run in the neighborhood of 120 miles an hour. This boat will run from 80 to 100 miles an hour in 3.7 seconds.
Flying the waves at that speed requires a fine touch with the throttle, along with lots of horsepower. Power for Fountain's offshore racing boats comes from Mercruiser, 1,100 horsepower twin-turbo V8s, fresh from the shop of renowned engine tuner, Troy Dennis.
Without the horsepower that he packs in there and the dependability that he packs into these engines, we'd have a very hard time maintaining the success that we've gotten into. In our racing boats, we normally have more than one person running the boat. Usually there's someone throttling the boat and possibly trimming the boat, and then there's someone navigating the boat, and that is telling you which way to go. And then there's the driver who's pointing the boat in the direction that the navigator tells him to go. There are an awful lot of functions, and of course you would appoint the navigator and possibly the throttle man to watch all the gauges on the dash, particularly the most important gauges, to make sure that you're not having a problem. We have helmets on. We can talk back and forth freely to each other.
How's everything going? Looking good. 100 miles an hour, 5,000. He can't even catch our ass. I'm just running out of way for him. I was 110 for you there. You were hauling ass, son. How we look on our temperature? Everybody looking good. We're about 112 or 14. How many RPMs are we turning? 5 But it's got some awesome acceleration, ain't it? Yeah.
Coming up next, the wild world of tunnel boat racing.